We've looked at sharpening bench planes and chisels, but I always get questions about specialty tools like skew planes, shoulder planes, router planes. So I'm going to discuss sharpening each of those. The first one I want to talk about is the shoulder plane. That's the easiest, and it's essentially like a chisel. The first thing we need to do is get the blade out. Most shoulder planes are the same in that respect. There's a lever cap of some kind. So this is a Veritas large shoulder plane. I'm going to loosen up the lever cap, and then if I loosen it enough, there it slides out. And then getting the blade out is a little tricky. You have to lift it up. Now it won't just come straight out. You have to turn it sideways to get it out. So that works pretty much on any shoulder plane. So let's get started with the sharpening process. The first thing I'm going to do is hollow grind the blade. I'm going to hollow grind the blade at the honing angle that I want. So I'm shooting for about 32-degree honing angle. So I've got the blade in here set up for that angle. And I'm pretty much done here. I'll just finish this up. Now you really want to make sure the hollow grind is square, because you don't have much lateral adjustment in a shoulder plane. So that looks good. It's nice and square. We'll move on to honing. Before I start honing, I want to talk a little bit about honing guides. Now, the problem here is, a honing guide would be nice for this, but if I try to put it into the normal position here, it doesn't close up far enough to be able to hold it there. If I was to put it down here in this chisel slot, the problem here is I can't get it back far enough to get me the 32-degree angle that I want. If I switch to the Lie-Nielsen guide, I've got a similar issue. I can hold it just fine, but once again, I can't get the blade back far enough to hone at 32 degrees. So that doesn't work. Now I do have this Kell side clamp honing guide, and this does work. What I found though is you have to have it in here just perfectly. It doesn't really, it grips it well, but it's not guaranteed that it's going to be perfectly parallel. It's a little tricky to get it so that it hones parallel to the edge. And then lastly, I could use this Veritas guide here. This is a top clamp guide, and this will definitely work. But this is an expensive guide. I don't personally own one. So what I'm going to do here, I've hollow ground at the angle that I want to hone at. So because this is a nice, small, relatively light blade, it's basically like a chisel without the handle, which is great. So I'm just going to hold it on here at the correct angle. And I could hold it like this, but I find it easier if I turn it like this. Now I can go back and forth, unlike a chisel. It's a very small, light blade. And so very quickly, I've got, I probably even overdid it there. So there's my 1000 grit. This is 4000. Let's do a few passes here. So that's looking good. So this is a simple process, and this is one of the bigger shoulder plane blades. Most of them are even smaller than this. Of course, always want to lift it straight up. And I think that should do it. That looks great. So shoulder plane blade, pretty straightforward. Just think of it as a very light chisel blade. Next up, I'm going to switch to a spokeshave blade. That's another question I get. The issue with the spokeshave blade is how short it is. It's about 2 inches wide, same as a number 4 bench plane. But the issue here is, it's a little hard to hang on to this because of the length of the blade. Now, I typically don't do this, so I just tried it to see if I could. And you can, if you just have this barely clamped in here, you can get to a good angle. Now, I'm going to, like the shoulder plane blade, I'm going to hollow grind this at the same angle that I want to hone it at, because I'm just going to freehand hone it. And it looks like I can get to that, 32 degree angle. So this does work. I don't know for sure, but I'm guessing Tormek makes a jig that will work just fine for spokeshave blades. But I want to show you the jig that I made that I use on my grinder. I don't have a Tormek, and this is my jig. It still references via this rabbet onto the bar, but notice it clamps the blade away from the bar about an inch, I don't know, inch and a half or so. So if I put the blade in here, I can get it fully engaged in this clamp, and I just want to make sure that the edge is parallel to there, so I'm just eyeballing that. So that looks pretty close. We'll double check it in a sec. Okay, so it's clamped there, and now I can move the bar up to get the angle that I want. So I can just dial that in, and notice too that I've got this relieved here, so I can get pretty much any angle that I want. So that looks pretty good. So make sure that's tight. Now, this has to be pushed onto here. It's just simple as that. So we'll take a look there. It looks like I'm a little too far forward there, so I want to lower this a little bit. So I'll dial this in until I get it right, and then I'll go ahead and hollow grind this bevel. All right, so that looks good. We'll go to the stones next. We'll take the blade out of the holder, and I'm just going to sharpen this like the shoulder plane blade. It's a small blade. It's easy to find that bevel. Once again, I'll put it at an angle. It's a little easier to move it back and forth like that. Okay, my hollow grind is a little uneven, but I'm almost there. I've got a wider bevel there than there. So. Okay, there's 1,000. This is 8,000. And come back and do the face. Couple more passes. And that looks great. We're good to go. One other option I should point out for the Spokeshave blade is the Lie-Nielsen honing guide. It comes like this, but you can order extra jaws for it. So these are the long jaws, and if you replace these short jaws with these long jaws, then you can grip the Spokeshave blade far enough out where you can support it easily to hone. So that's one other option. If you have the Lie-Nielsen honing guide, that works great. On the Skew blade, like the Spokeshave, we can choose to do this, freehand, where we hollow grind the same angle we want to hone, or we could do it using a honing guide and hollow grind at a shallower angle. Now, because the blade is at an angle, we can still hollow grind regardless, because our hollow grind jig, the Tormek jig or most other jigs, they're going to be top clamp jigs. So I'm not going to grind this, but I could certainly set this up. Now, Veritas says the angle here needs to be 22 degrees from perpendicular. So you want to make sure you follow that angle pretty closely. Once again, this tool, like the shoulder plane, doesn't have a lot of lateral adjustment, so you want to be pretty close to that 22 degrees. So I would hollow grind this just like any other tool, and then once it's hollow ground, we'll take it out here, and then we'll take a look at our honing options. If I hollow ground this at the same angle I'm going to hone, I could, like the other blades, I could find that angle pretty easily. Once again, it's a small blade, it's light. I could easily find the hollow grind angle. If I wanted to use a honing guide, I'd have to use a top clamp honing guide. And the Veritas guide works well for that. So I could easily put this in here, find the correct angle, and hone. Now, I did notice on the Veritas website, they actually make a jig that locates this blade in this holder. It's a special jig just for this type of blade. So in that case, and I've just done this freehand before, just by eyeballing that getting aligned. So anyway, so you could use the honing guide, this top clamp honing guide, assuming we hollow ground at, say, 25, and now I'm honing at a steeper angle, or we could hollow grind at our desired honing angle and then find that angle and go for it. Either way, it works just fine. Last up is the shoulder plane blade. Now this is definitely a tricky blade to sharpen. So the wider blades, the 1/2 inch and the V blade, on some of these you can take this off. So this one has a screw here. The Veritas blades which have this same style post on them. You can also remove the blade, and it's such a short blade you can do it by hand, or I think with that router plane they give you a holder for it so you can put it in a honing guide. So those are fairly straightforward. The tricky one is this one. You cannot take the blade off of the post here. So what I find the best way to do this is get your stone off to the edge of your support, whatever that is, and I'll typically just hang the blade off the edge of the stone. I'm not going to do this because this is still pretty sharp, but you hang the blade off the stone, and I'll put pressure there, and then I'll just pull it back towards me. You might be able to push, but it just depends on what's comfortable for you. But I'd want to like put my thumb here and push forward. But I personally find it much easier to pull it. So I've got my right hand holding it, kind of supporting over here, my left finger pushing down, and just honing like that, of course, going through the grits. Now you really have to watch. You don't have a lot of reference, and because you've got a lot of leverage over here, it's easy to rock this and get this surface out of flat. And once you get it out of flat, it's very difficult to kind of get your reference back again, because you don't have a flat reference anymore. You've got a convex reference. So you just have to be careful. Lots of pressure there. Get comfortable with it, and just go one direction with it. Now I do have a couple of possible other options that will help you get close to your angle if you lose your reference, or if, say, if you buy an old blade or something and it's pretty beat up. So we'll take a look at those. Okay, if you have totally messed up the blade, or you've got a blade that was messed up to begin with, you have a couple of options that may or may not work for you, but I'll show you what I've done before. One of those is on the Tormek, this can work, is if you've lost your reference, you can, I'm resting my hands on the bar here just kind of as a reference, and then come in and you're kind of hollow grind like that. Now that's not the best situation because you're not hollow grinding perpendicular to the blade. You're a little bit crooked. But I have done that in certain situations. The other option that I think is better is use the side of the wheel. And once again, I've got my hands on the bar here. And now it's easier to see what I'm doing. I can actually see where it's grinding. And if you set the bar, set the shaft on this bar, and that kind of gives you some good support there. And you can come in, and I've found that works pretty well, just to once again reestablish that bevel. Now there is one other option that I've read about. I've never tried it, but that's for the drill press. So I'm going to grab something and show you what that looks like. Okay, the last option involves the drill press and a little grinding wheel like this. So this came out of a Dremel tool. And so pretend we're at a drill press here. So I would chuck this in the drill press and then spin it at pretty high speed, and then come in with the router plane blade, and you could put a little hollow grind on that. Now I wouldn't go that depth, but you could create a hollow in there. And I do know somebody that created a holder that this piece of wood this just sat in, and they just clamped it onto the piece of wood, so it held it parallel to the drill press table, and then they came in and just worked that back and forth a little bit to create a little bit of a hollow there. And then when you went to your stones, you had 2 points of contact that made it easier to do that. So that's another option if, like I said, if you lose your reference or if you get an old blade that really needs some work. So I think that covers any edge tool sharpening, or I should say any plane blade sharpening that you're going to come across. If you do happen to find something that's a little out of the ordinary, hopefully one or more of the techniques I covered in this video will help you figure that out. The only other blades that I get questions about are carving tools, and that's a different world, a lot of different techniques there, some of which don't really apply to what we've been talking about here. So I hope you got a lot out of this. I hope that answered any questions you might have about sharpening other edge tools, and happy sharpening.